All right, guys, thanks for sticking with us. That was just a quick reboot to get ourselves ready, both with production and even ourselves mentally, as we rack our brains for the first series of the day between Amaz versus Reynad. Now, we talked about this a little bit, Nathan, and you talked about what's on the line for both of them. I kind of want to throw my lot in there and talk about how both these guys kind of want to also cast off the onus that they're just popular streamers, that that they have a fan base and that's all they have. They don't really have the skills to back up, essentially, the reputation that they have. And I think both these guys want to solidify their position and even prove that their runs aren't flukes. People kind of point to Maz saying maybe he got lucky, maybe he's got a few very fortunate draws and runs, or they even look at Reyna and saying he's just a guy who likes to talk big and maybe he's not as good or as touted of a deck builder as he thinks he is. And I think these guys, I don't know if one series will settle it, but I know that it'll be one step closer to achieving their goal of being able to back up their word. So I'm really looking forward to this match. And if you can kind of look immediately, Reynad's also even gone a step ahead and banned Amaz's Vintage Priest, while Amaz has banned the Miracle Rogue, rightfully so, from Reynad.
Yeah, I can have no qualms with banning Rogue anytime it's in my opponent's lineup. I think it's the best class at the moment and probably a pretty significant margin. And Amaz has sort of got an interesting lineup because he's actually not playing a Rogue. And we sort of touched on this yesterday. He doesn't really play Rogue that often at tournament scenarios. It's just not a deck that he has in his lineup, which is sort of weird. But if I was going to ban something in this lineup from Amaz, I probably would. I mean, I imagine I would just ban Druid. And sort of looking at this lineup, I can understand banning Priest because it's something that you likely haven't practiced against a lot, and it's something that he has practiced. I mean, I don't even know how many games, thousands of games with Priest. So he knows the deck inside and out. He knows the matchups inside and out. Where most of the time you're just not going to be playing against Priest pretty much ever in your practice sessions. So taking it out of the lineup so that way you can't get tricked or find yourself in a very unfamiliar situation where you're uncomfortable makes a lot of sense.
Definitely. So we have Paladin, Druid, Warlock versus Druid, Warlock, and Hunter. The game's actually ready. We don't have to really speculate too much about opening draw or opening classes rather. So let's jump straight into the board and find out what's happening between Amaz versus Reynad, Druid versus Hunter. I know that Reynad was even talking yesterday with some of the teammates in Tempo Storm saying maybe I should just lead Hunter in my series versus Amaz. And so he is going to go with it. And Amaz, well, he does start off with his Druid, which is tried and true, and he's been able to sweep many series right off the bat. But Reynad picks up some important cards. Savannah Highmane, you always tout its strength and potency in this matchup, and having it in your starting opening hand is very useful for the Hunter player.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised he mulligans the Unleash the Hounds too. I guess Buzzard is probably a higher priority. So he wants a good curve, and he wants Savannah Highmane. Unleash the Hounds, it feels like a really tough card to mulligan. I guess it's definitely justifiable, but I would like to see him keep it.
Sure.
In Amaz's hand, I don't think there's any problems with this.
Having a Lothab early on, being able to have an Innervate to kind of fill out the curve appropriately.
Oh my gosh. Right out of the gates, game one, turn one, two Savannah Highmanes in hand. This could be a tough one for Amaz.
Well, how about this? The decisions between Flare and Tracking. Tracking is a card that you often use to dig through what you need specifically, but how do you know exactly what you need sometimes this early on? Unless you're 100% sure of the kind of deck that your opponent's been playing. So Reynad's going to opt for Flare.
Yeah, if we're taking a look at how his hand's going to develop, because he drew the second Savannah Highmane, he really wants to play turn 5 and turn 6 Savannah Highmanes. So something to consider is how his curve ends up smoothing out. So Flare here is just as, I think it's just as good as Tracking at the end of the day, because you're probably going to use the other one on the next turn anyway, because the 2 damage isn't quite as relevant. What's relevant more so is just hitting the right drops. So Scavenging Hyena is even pretty good, but I probably would just take Tracking and Tracking again here. It's pretty close, though.
Yeah, I like it for sure, and you can kind of tool your mid-game appropriately. Now, he's playing Scavenging Hyena and the Web Spinner, which is a pretty neat combo that you can kind of continue to bolster your ranks while keeping your hand size reasonable as well. So it's a combination we haven't seen too often, but I know that Reynad's been testing it for a while, and he thinks it's pretty good.
Yeah, this Innervate Yeti's going to do a lot of work, though. He's going to need a really good roll on this Animal Companion. He needs it basically to not be a Leok.
Well, let's see what Reynad's able to get.
Ooh, it picks up a Buzzard, too.
And Amaz does have a swipe to back it up as well. So whatever the Animal Companion comes out, he's able to kind of push through. Reynad rolls a Huffer.
Oh. That's actually that's still not a very good one either. Like I don't really know. He's just yeah, all these spots are bad. Like Animal Companion just feels like not a very strong card right here. Is all. It's getting the job done, but you're not thrilled about it by any means.
Well, Amaz gets the combo pretty early on, and you know the amount of damage you can rack out early. Again, if he just kind of pieces together another Innervate or something kind, and he's able to push in damage, he can end the game so early. Reynad's already down to 20 by turn 4. That Innervate Yeti is doing so much work.
Yeah, and he still has to deal with this board position. I wouldn't be surprised to see an Unleash for 1 here.
I think, yeah, you've taken so much damage from the Yeti. It's just a very difficult sacrifice because you do have the Buzzard, but I think your upcoming turns are going to be pretty logical. Force your opponent to be able to do something. But interesting enough, when Amaz slams down something like the Lotheb, then Reynad still can't really do much because he can't coin out a Savannah Highmaid.
Yep. He's thinking about the difference between Kill Command and Unleash the Hounds. And then his third line of thought, I imagine, is probably somewhere between, well, can I just play more minions? But he really doesn't want to drop 4 more health to this Yeti right now. It's also, this is going to be kind of a rude awakening, too, because even if he gets to this spot where he's able to coin out a Savannah Highmaid, Lotheb's actually going to stop the coin. If that's the position that Amaz wants to be in.
All right, well, he opts to drop the Buzzer, draw a card, and he picks up a second Animal Companion.
I don't know if you can let this Buzzard live, though. These are actually some pretty tough decisions for these players. Like, it feels like it's been a really standard game so far, but these are...
That was an interesting decision. Clunky. Yeah, because Reynad's forced the position of Amaz where he has to spend his turn removing, and this might give him the opportunity to play that high main that he really needs. Yep. So I think it's a very intelligent decision from the game.
Oh, wow. That's a really weird draw. Did we see that yesterday from Amaz?
We did, and we kind of made observation that this seems similar to his DreamHack deck, but the only difference is that he has obviously cards like Lotheb to kind of bolster the ranks. Now, keep in mind, Amaz, I think using this Mark of the Wild is nice because he does have that combo. If you can kind of push through that damage and get it in, it can be the huge game changer that he wants and just completely end the game prematurely, while Reynad still has lots of options. Like, the Hunter has these drops that they want to put out, but he's been busy trying to respond to his opponent. And this Innervated Yeti, once again, just look how much health at Reynad's at. He's there at 14 already.
I don't know how you respond to this. It's like this is the second time you've ignored it, and it's like coming back to haunt you now. Or rather, it's the first time you've ignored it, and it's kind of coming back to haunt you now. I don't think you can ignore this again. Like, you have to do something about it. So it's disrupting his curve about as much as it possibly could. A second Huffer, though.
That is nice. He's able to deal with it immediately, rather than be really passive about it. And he can continue to build forward.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say being able to hold on to Kill Command is really important here, too. Because if his opponent has something like a Druid of the Claw in taunt mode, he needs to be able to take it out immediately. So he doesn't have to use Coin and Kill Command afterwards. It's just really fortunate that he doesn't have to be in that position.
Okay, well, Reynad's finally starting to take back the board a little bit. And Amaz does have a couple of options at his disposal. If he wants to kind of disrupt his opponent's next turn, with spells at least, he drops something like Lotheb, but Karen is also a pretty intimidating presence on the board as well for Hunter. Okay, he's going to drop the Lotheb and pass it over to Reynad.
I think Lotheb's almost certainly the drop here. Because if your opponent's going into Savannah Highmaid, you're just fine with that. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You're very close to lethal if your opponent drops Savannah Highmaid.
Oh, man. I forgot about that. Like, what you always kind of worry about turn 9, but he has Swipe and Savage Roar.
Right. The old 5 mana coin.
Yeah, good old play coin, lose 4 mana. Man, from Reynad here, he's again not able to utilize his game plan. Ideally, you'd like to get these Savannah Highmains, but
yeah,
he's been under so much pressure because of this one Innervate Yeti that's been taking so much of his life resources.
I think you got a Houndmaster here too. Here's a question though: do you Houndmaster the Web Spinner, or do you Houndmaster some of these guys? Just want the extra damage in.
I suppose so. It also has more health slightly, so he can't just Wrath and push through. If he had second Wrath.
Yeah.
Naturalize. Amaz. Adopting a little bit of that
Whoa.
Asian metagame. I mean, we were talking about it a little bit in Shenzhen, and we kind of joked about how Asians love Naturalize, and we thought about like, whoa, what can you do with Naturalize? Like, Naturalize combo, ha ha ha. And then we just sat there like, oh my god, you can Naturalize combo. And then
That's actually that seems pretty solid.
yeah, that's why we like sat at each other and like laughed, and then we stopped laughing and looked at each other like, oh my god, this is actually a legitimate thing you can do. Not to mention that if it's more of a control game, and I mean, the ramp druid has so many threats anyways, you're not really worried too much about cards. You just want to protect your big taunters. And so I guess Amaz kind of took that conversation more seriously afterwards, and he's now employing the Naturalize. So good for him. I'm going to see how it's going to work out for his benefit.
Wow. That's a. It makes a lot of sense when I think about it, because you're trying to end the game around the turn 9 or 10 mark anyway. Oh, look at this. He's just going to put his opponent down below the 4 mark because he knows that hunters don't run any heal cards, and so swipe is just lethal here.
Wow.
So Reynad literally has to end the game.
And I don't think he can whatsoever. He has the web spinner. He has a Kodo from it, but those are all great if the game was going to be developing over the next couple of turns. Reynad has lots of answers, but nothing at his disposal to end the game right here.
Did Naturalize just end this game a few turns earlier than it should have?
Oh
my gosh.
Oh my god, Lotheb.
Oh my gosh.
Does that give him that small little window? Because then now Maz has to have a Druid of the Claw of some kind, or a Keeper of the Grove off the top to end this game. Oh no, it's an Ancient of War. That's a small little window. Wait, no, the Savage Roar is enough, man. No, it's not.
No. He's still
oh, wait, I read that as 6, not 8. That's crazy.
Okay, so does Reynad have lethal this turn? This is what I was trying to count. And it looked like, if aside from a taunt, that he did have lethal. But he can't play any more minions on the board, so he's got 5 in hand. No, there's just no way this is lethal anymore, is it?
I'm trying to count, so he's got 10, 15, 17, 22, 27. 27.
Is he really 2 damage off?
So maybe he has to use like Unleash the Hounds, draw a Hunter's Mark, and then push through.
He has to sacrifice something before he can Unleash the Hounds.
I think you sacrifice one of your non-beasts, so that way you can get some synergy, maybe. I don't know. At the same time, it doesn't really matter. But that's probably his only out here. The Hunter's Mark?
5, 6, 7, 8.
Because the Hunter Mark still allows him to kill command and hero power. Oh, man. Reynad with his Hunter puzzles.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'm only seeing 14.
Regardless, he needs to draw something big off of this.
Oh my gosh.
One card!
Wow.
Oh, it's a Timberwolf! Oh my god! He is running out of time. Can you do this? Can you do a second Timberwolf? Oh my god, Reynad doesn't have enough time!
Oh no!
No! I think he had an opportunity!
Gosh.
Oh my lord! That's gonna do it, and Amaz is gonna be able to swipe it down. There was that one window of opportunity, and Reynad top deck it back-to-back Timberwolves. Maybe that was what he had to push through, and he's ran out of time.
Gosh, turn timer coming into play.
Oh my god, I had a total flashback to season 2 of 24, where it was just like that countdown. Oh my goodness. But this time it wasn't a happy ending whatsoever. Well, I guess if you're a Maz fan, that's true. I sound so biased.
If you're a Maz fan, it's a great ending.
I guess you know who I'm cheering for in the series.
Double Timberwolf. I'm looking at it too, and I'm trying to count it, and I didn't really have the time to see it either. I would actually have to go back and continue counting to see if he had the damage for lethal. I think it's really close, though. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Again, we were on such a small time window as well, and I'm like listening to I'm getting excited by you getting excited, and I'm like, is he gonna draw it? And then he drew Timberwolf, and I was like, this could be the start of a double Timberwolf. And then he drew the other Timberwolf, and then I just grabbed my head, and I couldn't believe what was happening. And then I just my mind just couldn't count to 6 all of a sudden.
I think we couldn't even as spectators. I can't even imagine the frantic scramble of what Reynad had to feel like at those last few seconds where the rope's burning. And that's a scenario where, once again, you have to kind of be able to make those decisions quicker. And that timer does introduce another element of being able to come to the decisions much quicker.
Yep.
Otherwise, you pay a price of winning that game. If Reynad wins that game, this series could be completely the opposite direction. Like, what if from this point on, Amaz just goes in 3-0s because maybe his best response to the Druid is that Hunter? I don't think so, though, because I was pretty sure Reynad was playing Zoo. But still, it's nice to kind of take every win you can get.
I mean, I'm going to take everyone I can get. I mean, as long as it's not like a scumbag move. Like, you know, there's no like judging in this game really. It's just like there's a DC or something. You know, sometimes you got to take the win. But in this game, a win's a win. Like, I don't care if my opponent made a mistake and accidentally pyroblasted himself for 10.
Sure.
I'll take the win all day long.
Errors, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, now that we kind of got a breather from that exhilarating finish to game number 1, let's go to game number 2 and find out what Reynad can do to climb back, or can Amaz continue to put on this pressure? Amaz did start off pretty nicely once again with that innervate, and he just kind of did the right thing. I still like how Amaz set up for that swipe lethal. It just makes sense. It kind of puts him in a position to win and puts Reynad in a position where he has to do something crazy to be able to pull himself out, which he almost did.
Right. Like, I mean, one of the positions that he can lose is if his opponent taunts up. And something that I think that you can pretty much weigh out of all Hunter's ranges is the ability to actually heal themselves. Especially right now, with the way this metagame's going. So, putting your opponent to 3 and then just threatening to swipe is just exactly what you should have been doing. But, I mean, we saw maybe Lotheb was something he wasn't thinking about, because Lotheb almost lost in the game. In that one.
Well, Reynad does have an interesting opening hand to kind of put everything together. You know, how badly does he want to kind of continue pushing out pressure, utilizing these abusive sergeants, but then he loses ways to activate his eggs and kind of pave the way for the rest of his turns, because Mukla will continue to get really strong. But then, you know, how much are you playing into future things like swipe and whatnot? So
it's a pretty rare circumstance, I think, that you use abusive sergeants this early as Zoo versus Druid, because one of the most powerful tools you have is the ability to swing the board by buffing up a minion and attacking one of their big taunts, and then also developing your board at the same time. But Mukla and Soulfire really changed the dynamic of this hand, because Amaz has to make something happen very quickly, and in the meantime, even though he's able to answer this board pretty reasonably, he's going to take a lot of damage in the process. So here, I imagine you swipe. That's going to clear 4 damage off the board and then set you up for a Keeper of the Grove. But he's still taking 7 damage on the counter swing from this, and then facing down a few more points of damage. Plus, Reynad's drawing 2 cards in turn and still developing his board. So this is a spot where, even though he's drawn Keeper, Mukla is one of the cards in this matchup that can really help you keep the pressure on and keep applying damage. And that matters a lot when you're talking about losing 2/3 of your life in the first 4 or 5 turns of the game.
absolutely, and just look again at the just amount of pressure that Zoo's been able to do once more. Amaz is down to 12 health on turn 4. Keep in mind he Wild Growth. And he draws a Yeti, which is, again, a great value card against some of the stuff that you have. But I think Reynad's pretty happy to see what he, with this Keeper of the Grove and being able to target down, because at least now he still has an ability to utilize the Soulfire. As long as he doesn't draw something that's kind of useless with that Soulfire, like Doomguard.
This is going to be tough, though. I mean, Amaz is going to have an Ancient of War next turn. That's going to be kind of tough to push through. I think he has just enough to be able to stabilize. And I like this play from Reynad, but...
Ooh, second Soulfire!
That may seal this deal, because Amaz is going to lose his Ancient of War this turn.
Oh my god, you're absolutely right.
If Reynad drops...
Okay. All right, so, well, I guess getting double Soulfire that early, and it was 1 card off from being a painful sequence, because if you got double Soulfire off the top, that would have been relegating one of them completely useless.
Yep.
All right, so Reynad draws a second Nerubian Egg, and with a lot of damage on the board already, and the Direwolf Alpha able to pump things up, he can get these effective trades.
5. Looks like he's going to have to trade in his Ardent Squire, too.
Mm-hmm. Overkill by a little bit.
He's thinking about if there's any draws that are lethal right now.
Does he play Doomguards in his deck? I have to imagine so.
I think so as well, but I think what he's more likely to be playing is something like Power Overwhelming.
Oh.
Because he has to think, he's thinking about if there's any draws that are lethal right now. Do you have to imagine so? I think so as well, but I think what he's more likely to be playing is something like Power Overwhelming.
Okay, and that makes sense with the Nerubian egg.
Right. So like you power overwhelming, say like the Golem and then Soulfire,
Uh-huh.
you're looking at 9 points of damage afterwards. So I
Well,
think that's what he was going for.
he's got 11 right here, and when everything keeps shifting, that knife juggle also pops
Yep.
with
He's putting
another
together his
damage.
damage really well here. He's put together his damage really well this turn.
And once again,
Wow.
trying to see if he can
It's
get the
both
soul
juggles.
fire. And no, I don't think it really matters,
Oh,
right?
it
'Cause
doesn't
he still
matter,
has
actually.
Soulfire. Yeah, so Reynad wins either way. The 50-50 conflict didn't matter. I was like, well, actually, it doesn't. It's kind of inconsequential because the Soulfire does exact these. And Reynad's able to end the game super quick and tie up the series. And that's the power of Zoo. You know, I think Reynad was able to draw really well that game. That was one of the first times you see Reynad pretty much get the perfect draws with the Zoo deck that he wanted. I think yesterday, Zoo was pretty bad for him.
Yeah. It was
And I think that was kind of indicative of what Zoo can do against Druid if they just don't get those innervated starts that can completely seize control of the game.
Yeah, he had a really strong start that game. What's even scarier is it could have been an even stronger draw. If those abusive sergeants would have actually been something like Flame Imps instead.
Oh, yeah.
With a Mukla, can you just even imagine? Mukla is like a really important card in that matchup, though, because if your opponent isn't able to put together a strong board presence, he forces out removal from your opponent and deals 5 to 10 damage in the process. It's just so much pressure to be dealing with on turn 3 from a deck that wants to play 4 and 5 mana minions. But that's why Muckla's in the deck. It's a very feast or famine style card, and frankly, those are the kinds of strategies that I like playing the most against players who you perceive as very close in skill to where you are, because you should be taking those big risks in order to have big payoffs.
And that tech ends up paying off for Reynad as he wins game number 2. Before we go into game number 3, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we resume Maz versus Reynad for WC North American Qualifiers. Welcome back, everybody, to the World Esports Championship Hearthstone North American Qualifiers. We're getting ready for game number 3 between Amaz versus Reynad. Plenty on the line for both fan bases as they want their fan favorite to advance forward. Now that Amaz has lost his Druid, he has to rely on his Warlock or his Paladin deck. Now, I haven't seen much of Amaz play Paladin, but I do know that he's a hard worker, and he loves to practice off-stream as well, which means this guy lives and breathes Hearthstone. I can't even imagine, like, if he's not streaming or doing stuff like sub goals for his viewers, this guy's practicing Hearthstone, doing stuff for the community, or hanging out with Milkcast. He's probably doing one of those 3 things.
That's part of what it takes to win titles, though, is you have to be putting in a
Hang
lot
out
of
with
practice, and you
Milkcast.
have to be putting in a lot of time, and you have to be hanging out with a Milkcast.
Oh, okay.
It's just that's the way it works.
Gotcha.
That's how you win titles, is you hang out with Milkcast.
Secret fend.
So I'm going to be headed to Hong Kong as soon as possible to make sure that I can jump on board with that, so I can stop getting second place at every single tournament. But sort of touching on his Paladin play, I played a little bit of it yesterday, and I haven't played a lot of Priest, but I know it's very difficult to play, and sort of one of the biggest practice I get from Priest is actually watching Amaz play and trying to measure my decision making versus his. And so I feel like I'm getting a lot better with it, but Paladin plays very similar to Priest in that it's a very long, grindy game. You're looking for big swing turns when your opponent doesn't expect them or when your opponent is feeling uncomfortable with the pace of the game and feels like they need to overextend. So I imagine his Paladin play is going to be very up to par. I think his build's going to be right on. I mean, we've seen strong builds from him all the way through pretty much every single tournament so far, and he's only been getting better at the game. That's what's sort of scary about it, is because we saw at DreamHack in Sweden, he was making a few misplays here and there and some sequencing errors and maybe even some philosophical errors with the way he was approaching certain matchups. But since then, all of his practice has really been paying off. And so this matchup, I imagine you got to go with Paladin. I think Paladin's got a great matchup versus Zoo. If you can manage to fade something like a Mukla, or even if your opponent has a Mukla, if you have something like Aldor Peacekeeper, it can really swing the tides also. So I think Paladin's a great choice here. If that's Handlock, though, Handlock's also a great choice. So that's sort of where we're at in terms of this matchup. But I imagine you got to go with Paladin here. It's just, I think, it's strongest against it.
All right. Well, I'm inclined to agree, but I wouldn't fault Maz on either decision because we do know he likes to play that handlock class for sure. Maz is going to go with handlock, though, and he does have an important card right off the bat. That Molten Giant can be the MVP swinger of this entire matchup because Zoo will inevitably drop you low. The only thing that you have to be worried about sometimes is, do you even have a taunter? As much as you can put out the Molten Giants, if they still have the finishing damage and you don't have a way to stop that with a taunt, the Molten Giants are a little useless. Interesting that he mulligans it away, though. I'm always kind of believing that if you play against the Zoo, you kind of want to keep a Molten Giant, at least one. Maybe not both, but at least one.
I wonder what he's looking for when he decides to mulligan Molten Giant. Maybe he's looking for like Egg and Hellfire.
Ah, that is also a big swinging potential too. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because part of the thing that this deck got was with Egg existing and kind of making you more resilient to things like Hellfire. Egg also works with Hellfire to put a 4/4 on the board. So
yes,
Zoo got stronger in this matchup, but so did Handlock. I haven't played a lot of it since all the Nax changes came out. Oh, there's a really important one, by the way. That's probably what he's more mulliganing for, honestly, is Sludge Belcher to help stabilize his mid-game so that he can find the cards he needs. Because one of the only ways I think you actually lose is if the game snowballs out of control and you just can't answer anything.
All right, well, Reynad already faced with a little tough decisions. You just want to you don't want to mindlessly slam minions on the board as the Zoo player because you might play straight into AoE. So being able to do these buffs and take advantage early of your position, the fact that Handlock's being passive is really important.
Two
double Belchers.
Sludge Belchers.
Hold on.
This is a deck, actually, that I haven't practiced a lot of Handlock again since the Nax changes, but there is a version I've practiced, and it's a double Sludge Belcher version. And the guy who tipped me off to this was Backspace. And I know that he practices a lot with Amaz, and this is one of the things where he said Handlock became a very tremendous force with the addition of two Sludge Belchers because it just gives you that much more staying power to scale into your late game. And that is a big problem when he starts getting into the turn 5 area because Reynad's going to have to be investing into this board to make sure that stuff like Shadow Flame isn't going to be impactful against him. And then he's going to find himself running into 7 points of taunt health, which is a nightmare for Zoo. That's like the one thing you don't want to be facing against is lots of taunt health.
I mean, you can deal with one or two of these big minions, but repetition, if you have Sunwalkers into Ancient of Wars, into Cenarius, you follow them back to back, it just gets a little bit too much for Zoo. Unless they have, like, the flood of 1-drops. Now, Reynad also really does value this Divine Shield, so that way you can play as aggressive as you can with this minion without feeling of being cleared of AoE. And once again, trying to play around things like Hellfire. He puts out King Mukla, and he's keeping Nerubian Egg still really passive, and I was kind of wondering, how important is it to put down Nerubian Egg early because you want to be resilient against those AoE, but it seems like he's intent on holding it. Any opinions?
Well, a lot of it depends on how your board is. So if your board isn't vulnerable to AoE, which it isn't right now, you've got a shield and a 5/5.
Whoa. Oh my god.
Not that much.
Oh my god, wait. Hold on a second. Amaz is going to mill a card.
Is he really?
He tapped. He's at 10 cards. Amaz, he didn't want to use a banana on his opponent, obviously, but he tapped because he was hoping he maybe have something to play.
Well, okay, so let's think about this for a moment, because this is actually a really important turn that could end up being the difference. He's shaking his head. Did he not realize he has 10 cards?
I think he miscounted.
Oh, geez.
That is going to be a disaster. If he throws away something like a Sun Fury Protector, that could mean the entire game has just shifted.
Yeah. What card do you want to draw here if you're Moz, by the way? Like, what card do you want to see burned?
I don't know. Like, if you run 2 Power Overwhelmings, I think the second one's a little bit more frivolous. Like, you won't need it as much.
I guess Owl.
Owl, I guess.
Iron Beak Owl gets ripped. You're like, yes! I didn't want that card anyway.
Gosh, I have no idea. Well, his opponent's going to be put down to 16. A Shadow Flame! Oh, no! That was one of his AoEs to clear.
Wow.
Okay.
This could get brutal. Mukla doing another big job in this matchup, by the way. And Reynad draws an Abusive Sergeant also.
Hang on.
He can actually get through the taunt with... He can get an egg on board and get through this taunt and deal a bunch of damage.
Yeah, holy snap. I was just wondering if there's a way for him to just push through and put his opponent at, basically the last life.
Right.
Now, Oz does have that Molten Giants.
There's two things that... I'm
Go
sorry
ahead.
to interrupt you. Yeah, there's 2 things that Reynad really needs to consider this turn. The first one is how important the egg is against a board sweep, and the second one is how does he win the game if his opponent plays Molten Giant and taunts. So that's what he's thinking about right now and how he pushes through. It's not whether or not he kills this Sludge Belcher. It's literally a matter of how he chooses to divide up his damage. And so one of the things he wants to do is make sure that all of his minions stay at a very high health total, and that it doesn't end up coming back to haunt him. So he's sacrificing the shield here. That minion can die to Hellfire, that's okay. Direwolf Alpha can bite the dust, not a big issue. Here, I think activating the egg is still fine, but you got to worry about Molten Giant and Shadow Flame. Even though you've already seen a Shadow Flame go through, how can you actually lose this game if you're in Reynad's position? Because he's taken complete control of the board. And I guess this is the answer, is you just YOLO it and hope that your opponent doesn't have a very strong response. And I can't blame him. I definitely make this play from time to time, and Amaz doesn't have anything!
Well, he's got Molten Giant and Taunt. That's about it. He can Molten Giant Taunt and then double... Well, actually, he can double Taunt if he wants, or double Banana.
Enough.
That is not enough, though.
Something done.
If he had something like a coin, maybe he could do something with, like, the Mountain Giant, Molten Giant, and then coin out the Defender of Argus to do something. But that would have been a huge swing, but he doesn't even have that available to him.
How on earth do you get out of this spot if you're Amaz?
Well, let's see. How much damage does Reynad have? He's got 10... 15, 17, and Amaz is counting with us. So 17, and if there's a 9 health giant, he just needs to have...
You also have to consider that when he gets a taunt minion down,
damage.
The way that he can attack, he can actually get additional points of damage because of the way the Direwolf Alpha minions are going to shift as well.
You just slide in.
Yeah.
And that actually is the difference maker right there.
Yep.
You're absolutely correct. So he actually has that lethal right there because of the sliding minions.
This is a tough turn. Amaz is going to have to act quickly, though, because if he finds himself having to tap and then reevaluate again... I don't know.
You can't even tap. You're at full cards.
Right.
Got
so
a Molten Giant
Molten
tap
Giant,
first.
Need to tap here? Okay, so he's just going to egg and Defender.
Oh,
Yep,
man.
I think that's the best play you can make. But I don't know if this actually survives through.
Well, we'll see. Depends on what Reynad draws off the top. Shattered Sun Cleric allows him to be buffed slightly higher so you can push through.
So 6, 7, 8, 9. He's got 9 to take out the Molten Giant and 3 to take out the egg, and then 6 damage to push through. So right now... Oh, no, the... Wait a minute. Okay, so if he attacks Mukla and Argent Squire into the Molten Giant, the egg becomes active, which can attack into the egg, and then Abusive Sergeant goes in the egg, and then there's 5 damage from the Dark Iron Dwarf, 2 damage from the Direwolf Alpha, and then 1 damage from Shattered Sun Cleric, so if he sees it, it's lethal.
There it is. Oh, well, okay. Didn't have lethal. He certainly had it before.
Yep.
A little insurance never hurts. And Soulfire, once again, is going to probably end the game for Reynad as Maz ends up falling here with his handlock. Despite having some of the answers that you normally want, but at the same time, he was not able to kind of deal with Zoo. You kind of have to be able to clear their board at least once, I kind of recommend in this matchup. But, you know, Reynad doesn't even show the Soulfire, so...
Didn't even need Soulfire for lethal, just on the board. Very well played game by Reynad. He really recognized that he had to swing this game out of control and push for it. And again, Mukla making a big difference. This is another matchup where Mukla can really turn the tables. If your opponent gets a kind of a slow start and you get a 5-5 and you're restricting their hand size, which actually was very relevant that game because Amaz ended up burning a Shadow Flame, that can really... I mean, that won the game. because his Amaz didn't have a board sweep, and instead was stuck with 2 bananas in his hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking if there was a way you can kind of pair it with the Molten Giant and AoE, but opponent still had Nerubian Egg, which again makes Zeus so resilient. And despite the fact that Reyna started off the series with basically the finishing of game one of a nightmare that you don't ever want to happen, especially on stream in front of thousands of fans, I think he's recovered really nicely and now put himself in a position where he honestly feel like maybe he can take the series. Now that Lamaz is down to his last deck, it's the Paladin deck. We're pretty sure it's the control style. Don't really think Amaz is that kind of guy to bring the aggro Paladin, but maybe that's also a reason to bring it if you're kind of Amaz. I'm not ruling out that possibility, but I'm leaning over towards the control Paladin because it's been performing so well in recent memory.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it'd be really tough to justify aggro Paladin, I think, in a format like this where Druid is just going to be so prominent.
Definitely.
And in a matchup where it's not even, I don't think it's that good against Miracle Rogue, honestly, because a lot of Miracle Rogue decks have been running 2 Earthen Ring Farseers. I'm not sure how it's changed with the cuts, but I think it's very fitting for Reynad to be 2-0 so far with his Zoo deck that basically he created and has perfected since then, and has only gotten stronger with next cards. So I think this is a tough matchup for Reynad, but wouldn't be surprised to see him put it away. Maybe a Mukla is going to come into effect in this game as well.
Oh man, we know Paladin likes to save cards too as well. It's do or die time for Amaz. Let's jump into game 4 and find out if he can climb back into this series or Reynad move on to face his teammate Tides of Time.
Your soul shall be mine.
Very curious hand. This is a matchup also that like I played a little bit of Zoo on ladder to kind of get a feel for how the new cards worked, and I'm still torn on whether or not keeping Nerubian Egg in a matchup like this is worth it, because you really want to be resilient against cards like Consecration, but you want to be able to develop your board to begin with. And since Amaz he doesn't anticipate Amaz having a lot of minions that he can trade with, so I think Nerubian Egg, it's strong in this matchup, but it loses a lot of opening hand value. It's a card you kind of want to draw on turn 4 or 5.
That's a fair assessment. Reynad's inclined to agree as he leans forward and mulligans everything. Doesn't pick up a 1-drop though.
That's kind of rough.
Yeah.
You know, Young Priestess did get cut from this deck though.
Mm-hmm.
It's a card that it was probably one of the weakest cards in the deck to begin with, and since you got cards like Haunted Creeper and Nerubian Egg, you had to cut something. So you're going to have a few less 1-drops here and there, but I don't think it's that consequential because the rest of your deck is just so strong. At Harvest Golem, though, that's a really strong answer right off the bat.
Yeah, Harvest Golem allows you to oftentimes 2 for 1, maybe 3 for 1 in those really rare instances, and get you good value.
I think you have Shattered Sun Cleric and ignore this this Harvest Golem.
I think so too. You also could gamble if you want with the Soulfire. I've seen people try to be super ballsy with that, but yeah. I don't know. Like that kind of stuff that's the breakfast of champions right here. Can Reynad swallow this?
Oh my gosh, this turn. You can see it too. He knows he wants to do it because I mean this is a chance for a blowout too. And these are the kind of plays I'm talking about. When these edges get smaller and smaller, and especially when you're in a matchup where you're at a disadvantage, plays like this make a lot of sense. You're either going to flat out blow your opponent out of the game, or you're going to put yourself in a tough position because he's in a tough position either way to begin with. So going with a safe play here is also fine. It's 2 very, very different routes. There's no in between here. He can't make a play that kind of hedges his bets at this point. He's either got to go one direction or another. And I'm really surprised he chooses to attack here and then doesn't choose the Soulfire afterwards. Like that would be the whole point of attacking is the Soulfire, right? I don't think I understand that. Because now he's just sacrificing his Knife Juggler straight up for a Harvest Golem.
I think it also could be the value of what he has in his hand. His hand is a lot of... It enables everything. It kind of builds off each other, and you do kind of lose momentum in being able to continue to build the board, especially if you lose Doomguard. I think Reynad didn't want to test the RNG gods. Excuse me, I have something in my throat. I don't think you want to test the RNG gods and potentially lose Doomguard, because Doomguard is also super important. You force your opponent to have a quality or nothing and just take a lot of damage. So Reynad, I feel like at the same time, didn't want to gamble that too much. Was it worth it? Maybe even loses something like Shattered Sun Cleric, and his play is really weak that turn.
Yep. So the only thing he's weak to when he does this is True Silver Champion, which Amaz happens to have. But that's one of the cards that Paladin is always going to be mulliganing for in this matchup is True Silver Champion. So this is the major strength, in my opinion, of this deck. is how much value this card provides you when your opponent's trying to one-for-one you throughout the course of the game.
Man. I actually didn't realize it, but one of the best ways you can even deal with it too is a Hammer of Wrath. But hold that thought, we have a Lotheb top deck with Reynad, and that's gonna relegate a lot of these cards useless, at least for one turn. Maz does fortunately top deck something to do as he gets into Azure Drake, but for this turn he's gonna be at the mercy of what Lotheb has.
Sunwalker, this game is gonna get mighty scary. Maz is gonna be on one card a turn, and it's a matter of if Reynad can put together an overwhelming amount of board pressure.
I think you got to go for this play, though. That one's too
Yeah.
good. Oh man.
No!
Oh,
Look at just sips from his cup. Doesn't miss a blink.
not
He's
phased.
just like, well, good day, sir. Sometimes Soulfire discards Doomguard.
Somehow Reynad's able to pick up an action from 1800.
He's got to be a gentleman when you're in the face of that sort of bad luck, right?
His Twitter profile says he is a time traveler of some sort. I guess.
Ooh. Interesting. What do you think it's like to time travel, by the way? Where would you go if you could go anywhere?
Well, you know, with my people's history, it's not that bright, so I'm pretty happy with the 21st century. I'd probably just go back a few years and tell myself in high school to stop being such a clown, and also tell him that my life later on is going to be awesome. So.
Okay, so you're on the Back to the Future line of how time travel works, where like you're going to meet yourself if you go back. You don't literally transport back and reverse it. You just are visiting yourself from the past.
Well, you know, if I was a friend of Reynad, I'd probably also tell him Soulfire because he's going to lose Doomguard. So can I use that as an answer too?
Sure. Wow, he drew another Doomguard though.
That's right. Okay, so second Doomguard also can pose really strong threats. But at the same time, you know, you do lose that ability. He's getting closer to something like a Quality and Consecrate. At the same time, it's not exactly like a Muz sitting on the most health in the world. He's at 12 health. And the Paladin kind of has to be able to balance everything with dealing with the board and healing up. Ideally, you have something like Pyromancer to kind of stabilize everything. But even so, this board is really difficult to drop something simple like a Consecration.
He is just one mana off doing everything he wants to do, it seems like. And so he's going to have to settle for these slightly smaller answers. Humility really pulling a lot of weight here, though. Like, this is something that you don't really see very often, is Humility being a very strong constructed card. And in this spot, it ends up being... it just takes a 4-power minion off the board, basically.
Or it's like a game 4 health, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's going to Doomguard here.
I think so. Do you bother activating the egg or force the Sylvanas to kind of push through?
I think you want the egg still there.
Okay.
This also keeps your 1/1 alive.
That is also true. And maybe a risk of taking that 1/1.
Oh, gosh.
Sylvanas dies.
Yep.
9 health left for Amaz. He does have healing, and he picks up Guardian of Kings, so he's got multiple sources of healing. But can he kind of climb back into it? This is Amaz's tournament life on the line.
How do you play this turn? Those 3 health minions are just... it's such... It's so annoying right now when you're looking at 2 damage in your hand, and you're like, I can deal 2 damage to everything, but it only kills a 1/1.
I think there's kind of slow take it, though. I mean, if you Hammer of Wrath and you out your Peacekeeper, is there an opportunity here for you to be able to answer? And again, you don't want to necessarily activate the...
Right, that's the issue here. The issue here is that he doesn't want to activate the Nerubian Egg somehow. But he may be forced to. Like, one of the plays he may have to make here is he may have to Hammer of Wrath and then attack with Sylvanas afterwards, so he can clear out the 4/4 and then have a chance to take the Doomguard. Or any of the minions he takes right now end up being very valuable. It's like, so this play is a risky play, but I don't think he has another option. So he's going to have to attack this 4/4 here, and then hope he takes the right minion, and then respond accordingly, which in this case is almost always Aldor Peacekeeper. He just needs to take the right minion. So, wow, this is a big turn.
Oh
my gosh!
And Reynad's nodding in approval. But, man, that was not the minion that Amaz wanted. That was literally the worst one available to him. King Mokla off the top with Nerubian Egg.
He's going to be short of lethal this turn, and he had a couple draws to do it. So now he's got to think about how he actually assigns his hand to something he's got to be worried about. is equality and I mean, it's got to be on your mind that equality and consecrate is there, or that something like Tyrion is there. Like all of these things are going to be coming into your head at this point. And this is the scariest part of Paladin is this turn 7, turn 8, turn 9, where they make these big pushes for recovery. If they're able to recover, you're basically shut out of the game. So he needs to draw something that's going to end it right away. And these two cards, I'm not sure it's going to be able to be done.
Agreed. You know, the Mukla could be even working against him if he leaves minions on the board.
Right.
And he's able to kind of improve it and get a better trade. So if you play Mukla, I feel like you're almost inclined to go for some kind of board control so that way they can't utilize the banana immediately, and at least you're able to respond to it. But at the same time, you do lose that damage. You lose that ability to maybe end with the top deck and reach. So this is a pretty difficult decision, a crossroads that Reynad has to kind of go down one and just live with the consequences. And he's running out of time.
I think this is just the all-in here. I think it's all to the face and then Mukla and Egg and hope things work out. He's going to disagree.
Okay.
Tough spot to be in.
Two eggs.
Still got a lot of damage on board. He's got to hope his opponent doesn't have Tyrion, basically. That's what he's really hoping for right now, is that there's no Tyrion. Oh, gosh. That is going to be a 5/7 Sludge Belcher, if Amaz wants it to be.
Hold on, is there an alternative around this? No, you can't use anything like Consecration. You know, obviously, Lay on Hands is way too passive. Yeah, I think it's Sludge for sure.
Taunting right now is just as good as healing up, basically, too.
Yep. Definitely.
I think he's going to play an Acolyte of Pain, though, over... Oh, no, he's just going to double Banana. He's playing it super safe.
Okay. So Reynad now has seen the uses of bananas, and the Sludge Belcher has come out.
Does he have something like an Owl in his deck?
Maybe. A Soulfire. Oh. Wow, this is already a little bit of a tough decision.
Oh my gosh. This is so brutal. He cannot push through damage this turn. He actually just can't push through any damage. I think he's got to get
think of an alternative way. Is there a way he can kind of like get a sick juggle and then Soulfire so that he doesn't have to lose his Mukla?
If he plays Knife Juggler, attacks with Harvest Golem, and the juggle hits the Sludge Belcher, he can keep his Mukla this turn.
Yes, because the damage golem will spawn one more knife, and that damage could mean all the difference, but that is a 33% chance. Otherwise, he might have to lose Mukla as well.
The 33% chance. The 33% chance doesn't even like win you the game too. It just makes you not lose your Mukla. This is a pretty tough spot to be in. I don't know if there's another play.
Maz can easily... He's got, what, 14 points of healing, so he can easily climb back into the 20s over the next couple of turns.
I think you got to go for it and just hope that the cards pan out correctly. Oh, wow.
Oh, he's not going to go for it. He's going to keep his Harvest Golem instead. And a move out of respect for Reynad didn't want to, again, test his luck too much. And Amaz does end up being able to go for the turn. He has second Consecration.
I think you got to heal here. I think you just heal with the 5/6. Yep. Because your opponent's got 5 points of damage. And if you heal to 15, they have to drop 10 points of damage to be able to kill you. That's almost impossible right now.
The Garden of Kings. All right.
Now he's starting for card draws as well. He doesn't want to attack this Harvest Golem, by the way, because he doesn't want to give his opponent a juggle. Like, the juggle could be the difference between winning and losing that in that spot. Like, say the juggle hits his face, and then his opponent draws Doomguard into Power Overwhelming or something.
Okay, well, Reynad's going to kill Acolyte immediately for a good reason. Doesn't want to give an extra draw unnecessarily. The juggle does end up hitting one of the tokens.
It's actually pretty nice right now.
Here's a spot where the Consecrations might do some heavy work, and Reynad puts Amaz at 12, but I think Amaz has a lot of cards that can help stabilize him. Sunwalker. He has a Consecration, and I think that should be a lot. That should be enough to kind of stabilize over the course of a few turns, unless Reynad's able to end it. He used both of his Doom Guards. I think he's used both Soulfires, or maybe that was the previous game. But either way, he's running low on resources.
This is rough. I mean, this isn't like a... this is a hard turn for Amaz because there's a lot of ways he can play this. but he feels very comfortable right now. I don't think there's any question about that.
Okay, uses Consecration, pops the egg, but he's able to at least weaken the board significantly.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a Sunwalker.
I think so, and
If
the
he
Guardian
plays the other
Beats can do so much work.
Yeah, if he plays the other Consecration here, if he played the other Consecration, he would have played it really out of order. Because if he would have played the other one, he should have attacked the egg first and then double consecrated. So, that's what gave me the indicator he's playing Sunwalker, and I think he should be playing Sunwalker anyway. And Raynad, wow, those are the two. This is where Zoo starts to struggle, is when it gets to this point in the game, and it doesn't have exciting turns. And I think that's sort of the... I mean, we're going to be going to Game 5 here. I don't see...
Absolutely. Amaz picks up a Kodo.
He can go up to 20 health if he wants, and he's sitting behind a big taunt.
I mean, you can even go beyond that and lay on hands flexibility for your minion to extend it. A Holy Light to bring him up once again, and even the Pyromancer. So these cards that Amaz didn't have, these are the cards that he needed, and he's finally picking up to seal the game. These are the cards that if he had in the mid-game, he could have been climbing back way easier,
Yep.
And be able to be more effective in the mid-game instead of being so passive.
Yeah, those are decent draws, but it's just not going to get the job done. Your opponent's got 7 cards in their hand. They're at 20, and they have a better board than you. And you have nothing other than a couple of minions on board.
Oh, especially to a second Consecration with this kind of clear potential. Tyrion has made an appearance.
Golly.
Not to mention that Raynad is also running low on health, so it's going to come to the point where as much as Amaz is playing defensive, if he drops a big minion and Raynad can't deal with it, the minion can just end the game.
Let me ask you this. This is sort of like we're going to veer off topic a little bit, even though this game is nearing the climax point. How important is it for Amaz to conceal certain cards in his deck at this point? Is that even a consideration of his? Like, he's at the liberty to be able to flex his hand that way. Is that something he's thinking about, or is he literally just thinking about closing this game?
I think Amaz is smart enough to do that. I think I talked to him about some of these things. Like, do you do any of the small things? Like, do you play from the right side of your hand so that way you kind of try to tilt your opponent by showing that you top deck it instead? Do you do all these things? He says it kind of really depends. It's not really exactly his MO. He's not trying to just mess with his opponent as much. But at the same time, I think you don't really have to conceal too much. A lot of these cards are pretty expected from Paladin. Like, what in this card here would be surprising?
Nothing would be surprising, but does he want to reveal a second Sludge Belcher right now? That sort of thing. Like, does he want to show Lotheb? I think his opponent, again, his opponent expects him to have it, but reinforcing that decision doesn't exactly help the cause. You know, you still want them to have some guessing work.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Wow,
but I mean, just nothing again out of the ordinary. At least on Maz's half. Second Consecration, that's usually included. The Belcher here is also a second one. You kind of play one, you might as well play two. It fits naturally. Everyone's been doing it. It's just easy to do. Yeah, and that's pretty much going to be it.
There's no reason to sit through this anymore.
Series is going to go to game number 5. Raynad tried to do as much as he could with what he had, but was not able to end the game as Paladin stays alive at a pretty comfortable health range, and that's what Paladin can do, just rebound very easily, even if a lot of aggression's aimed right towards the face. So we're getting ready for match number 5, but we're going to take a quick break, and in the meantime, make sure to thank 2p.com for putting on a great tournament. We'll be right back in a couple minutes, guys. Welcome back, everybody, to WC North American Qualifiers. You know, how appropriate is it once again that we've gone to game number 5 between these two guys, Amaz versus Reynad, who've been jockeying for position for advantage all series long, but in the end, it's come down to the Paladin versus the Druid. And, you know, we've been seeing lots of good plays. We've been seeing a little bit of missteps. But in the end, it's still tied, and this is all where it matters. Both players' tournament lives are on the line. The winner will go home for the day, out in the first round. The winner will stay alive for at least one more time with a date with ties of time in the losers round 2. Admirable, talk to me a little bit about the matchup so far with Amaz versus Reynad and how it kind of implicates with the Paladin versus Druid.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it just really could not get any closer of a game and any bigger of a game than this. We have two colossal names playing in a best of 5 where the winner advances and the loser is done. And Reynad was able to pull out 2 games with Zoo on the back of Mukla. But Amaz with Paladin, it's sort of like Priest's little brother in this regard, and he's been able to now turn it around. And we're looking at Paladin versus Druid, a deck that was at one point probably thought to be the worst class, versus a deck that has been throughout Hearthstone's history very dominant. And what a long way we've come with just a few card changes from Nax, and how much Sludge Belcher is able to make Paladin a force in these tournament metagames. And I mean, what left is there to say? I cannot wait for this last game.
It's going to be exciting, and I think if you're a Maz fan, you have to kind of be a little bit more hopeful because the Paladin can do well against the Druid if you can drag into the late stages of the game. You know, again, for the same reason that Druid sometimes struggles against Shaman, there is that efficient removal that Paladin can use. They can build the board, and Druid doesn't always have the best ways to remove after a certain point. They might use all their resources. At the same time, I can't, for the life of me, recall exactly what Reynad's playing with his Druid. Is it more that mid-range rampy style, or is it the token Druid?
It's funny that you mentioned that because I actually don't remember from yesterday.
Okay, I'm going to go on a limb and say it's the token Druid because I think we saw Tides playing.
He got Druid banned yesterday, didn't he?
Oh, you are correct because he did play his Miracle Rogue. No,
Yeah.
he got his Hunter banned. He got his Hunter banned, I think.
Was it Hunter banned?
It was.
I
Shefko banned
imagine-
his Hunter.
I imagine if I call me crazy, but I think Reynad's the kind of person who wouldn't play Token Druid and Zoo in the same lineup. I think he would diversify his lineup a little bit more. I literally don't remember, but I would venture to say it's a bigger ramp version.
I assume it's the token because I think we saw Tides playing it yesterday, but I could be wrong. Wait one second.
What?
With honor.
The heck?
All right, so this is what happened. So we were talking about Druid, talking about token and stuff, and it's like, this is why we can't remember it, by the way, because clearly he didn't play Druid. He brought Warrior. So I said, wait, what? And then Adam was like, wait, what? And then Milcast, our ear, said, wait, what?
Do we have an error in the overlay?
Okay, so, you know, this makes a lot of sense. The Warrior is his last deck. It's not Druid.
I know that we saw Warrior yesterday.
Now that Warrior, I remember the Deathwing is there. It's very real. I was like, wait, of course he's playing Warrior.
Okay, we have an error in the lineup.
Yes.
1,000 apologies. We just assumed he was playing Druid because Druid's so broken, but he's actually playing.
Okay.
This is the lineup. Okay, there was a major error in the overlay, so
That's right.
forgive us for that. You know, this is a live production. Sometimes there are slight misclicks that happen with bringing up these overlays. So this makes a lot more sense with why there was no Druid played yet from Reynad. He wanted to anchor with this Warrior deck. So forgive us. We're going to be seeing Deathwing Warrior. And is Deathwing going to come out? And I think if there's a matchup where it can make a big difference, this is one of them.
Certainly, you know, the Deathwing is the end game of a lot of things. Not every single Paladin. I think a lot of Paladins have been cutting things like BGH to squeeze in these other cards like Sludge Belchers. So if you can convince them to use up all the removal, then maybe you're able to just at least swing the game. They have nothing left, and they just have to answer you with 1/1s or something to that extent.
Armorsmith feels like a pretty decent draw here, but something he's worried about is True Silver Champion.
Well, fortunately for Reynad, there is none, but you definitely are concerned with that. And even the further turns, you're also concerned with things like Kodo that can immediately get value off of that.
So you need to start using this right now to keep picking up these 1/1s.
All right, well, Armorsmith is stuck on cleanup duty. Reynad gets the Sludge Belcher.
I imagine that Sludge Belcher is going to come down this turn. That is it's a pretty powerhouse draw right now. It's a big threat. It keeps your Armorsmith protected from cards like True Silver Champion, and it also starts putting on pressure. And what else do you
Not
need the coin for?
necessarily from the Kodo, though. So if the Kodo comes down, that Armor Smith will end up dropping.
Right.
But I agree for the exact analysis that you have. If he top decks the True Server, you don't want to get rid of that Armor Smith really easily.
Yeah, Armor Smith's going down regardless of which. Like, if his opponent's got Kodo, it's just going down. He has no way to protect it in that regard. I think there is some merit to Lotheb here, though. Because if he anticipates his opponent's going to play Kodo, the Lotheb is going to challenge the Kodo directly. And how important is being able to Lotheb your opponent's combo later on going to be? That's something he's weighing right now. I think he's actually thinking about that.
I think so. There's no other option. You know, Whirlwind, as much as it's nice to kind of clear the board, there really is no threat otherwise.
Okay. That's actually, this is a really heads-up play because he understands that Kodo is such a large part of his opponent's range when they've skipped on turns 1 through 4 and just hero-powered. So now this Lotheb is going to directly challenge the Kodo. That's actually really strong. Good foresight.
Does that change Amaz's game plan? Because then the Kodo just gets immediately killed off, and then you don't get that 2-for-1 value off that you can collect.
That is something that you have to think about. So it's how important is it now to be using Eldor Peacekeeper instead, or just sacrificing your Kodo and then letting your tokens clean up the work if they can?
Okay, well, he is going to go for the Peacekeeper play and save the Kono for a rainy day. Meanwhile, he has picked up both of his equalities, which can be important once again for Paladin to seal the deal. Sometimes in these control matchups, the Paladin, they just seize control of the board. They have so much going on.
Reynad is going to be able to do a lot of work here. It's good that Amaz has cleared a lot of the pressure out of the way, but he's still got to be facing down these 1-power minions, which pick apart his hero power and also extend his opponent's life total. Because something that Paladin has to be weary of is that it's got a finite amount of damage. And what Warrior's going to be doing is Warrior doesn't stay at 30 when it starts healing. It goes way above 30. I mean, it can hit into the 30 and 40 armor range if you're not putting pressure on them. So he can't just let this armor continue to build up. He's got to put board presence down and make sure he can make a push for it. He's got a lot of answers to his opponent's big threats, but he can't let the life total get out of control.
Agreed, but at the same time, on the opposite side, there comes a point where if the Warrior gets dealt with and you're able to swap down all of its threats, they actually just can't do anything against tokens. So if the Paladin can continue to build up a board and Amaz can kind of play this long game, which looks like he's going to favor that once again. He's just passing. Wow. Very tough call to make, but he's going to go for that. And if he can kind of legitimately play the long game and take out the threats single-handedly or one by one, then at that point, the Warrior just gets overwhelmed by what's on the board.
Yeah, this feels like a really easy Sledge Belcher turn. You pick apart both these tokens, and now this is presenting the same problem that Druid normally does for Paladin, which is True Silver Champion's kind of useless in this spot. And look at this board. Like, do you want to deal with this? Like, do you want to consecrate this? Or, like, is Kodo even good here? Those sorts of plays come into mind. And there's even that True Silver Champion we were talking about. And not even Sunwalker's that good here. Because if you get Sunwalker down, your opponent has a 1/1 to eat through it. And then it's just like, you're not really stopping anything because your opponent's just building the board to be able to take advantage of the minions that you're going to play. This is a really tough game now for Amaz, and he's got to assign his answers very, very carefully, because if he runs out of them, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. And at the same time, he's still got to be concerned with how much health that the Warrior is going to be capable of putting together, since he's lacking pressure of his own.
Was hero powering and passing the wrong move for Amaz the previous turn? If we can kind of take a second to rewind.
I don't know. It's tough to say, honestly, because again, his Kodo is already directly challenged. And something else that he wants to do is he wants to be able to save Kodo humility for actual threats. He doesn't want to be using them on things that he doesn't have to be using them on. So preferably you would Kodo something like an Acolyte of Pain, or be able to humility and Kodo something like a Baron Geddon or a Ragnaros.
Take out those big threats,
right,
and then be able to swing the board. Unfortunately, though, Amaz still is just playing that waiting game, and that's what Sludge Belcher is actually really good at doing. It can draw removal because it seems big enough to warrant some of his uses. Yeah. At the same time, though, it's able to endure a lot of the stuff. Amaz obviously setting up for something like a consecration play. If he uses Lotheb to trade, obviously doesn't want to give away his Armor Smith immediately. And then how does Reynad kind of respond to that?
I think you just continue to take it slow. This is probably just a shield block turn, and to continue to build your armor. There's no threat of your armor really getting shredded, and you have enough pressure on the board to be making a big difference.
Okay.
And that is a card that I think makes a really big difference right now. I'd be very surprised if this Armor Smith doesn't come down. because in addition to being very protected, he's going to start getting 2 armor for each damage dealt, and that's even, again, further working against the plan that we were talking about for Amaz, where he's got to be careful because he does have a finite amount of damage. He's going to be at a really high life total. It's going to be hard for Amaz to actually close this game.
Oh, man. And the consecration makes him gain 8 life. Well, actually, it takes out 2, so 6 life. And as much as maybe that's Amaz's game plan to at least stabilize the board a little bit, you know, he still has to deal with the overall macro picture of how do I climb back and be able to start pressuring my opponent.
This is one of those Warrior games where Warrior has drawn pretty decent. And again, we were talking about how one of the things that Warrior punishes the most is draws from your opponent that aren't extremely strong. So when you stumble in the early game, Warrior punishes that. And we're seeing that right here, up to 17 armor now.
If he was going to use Consecration, he took extra damage by doing this.
Yep.
And Maz, I think, realizes that he made a misplay here. Uh-oh.
Oh my gosh.
I think the wheels are coming off the wagon a little bit here for Amaz.
Yeah. Look at Raynad, up to 23 armor and 25 health.
That's
and there's
crazy.
Not
Almost
Alex
50.
in this Paladin deck.
Almost 50 health.
My gosh.
It's just ridiculous. And not to mention that he's still got the Fiery War Axe to immediately deal with it. Draws a cool Taskmaster. By all means, he can just continue to take this slow. And, you know, he's, again, whittling down the Paladin. And he's got lots of answers.
I would have liked to see Sylvanas played here, actually. Because you're in this exact same position you were earlier with the Kodo representation. You played Lotheb to challenge a Kodo, and now you didn't play Sylvanas to challenge a Kodo. So I think he may just be playing so fast. Like, he's such a comfortable life total. He's like, oh, I'll just armor up and keep going. So even if you're just going to take your time and think about it, you should just be taking your time and thinking about it.
I kind of want to also flip and say, well, what is the merit of keeping Sylvanas so that way in tight situations, if you drop something like Tyrion, you just put down Sylvanas and shield slam it, so that way you can just take Tyrion.
I mean, that is a reason to hold it, but I still think there's I mean, I still would like to see him think about it. It's not that not playing it was a mistake. It's that he didn't think about it very long. And this is a pretty complicated turn where you have plenty of time to think. You can think about this turn and you can think about your next turn as well. Like, is there just any reason to not take time?
Sure. You can see Amaz, he's the one taking time. He's like, well, I really don't want to use this Kodo unless it's a legitimate threat, which is been drawn here by the Grommash.
Wait a minute, he can just shield slam the face. That's lethal, right? Oh, no.
Right now he can't. He doesn't have the mana for it. He has to armor up one more. Oh, no, he will get that extra armor. Now he can shield slam the face. But he
shield slam only hits minions, unfortunately.
A classic rookie mistake, admirable.
Not bad.
All right, Amaz does have a second Wild Pyromancer, but you know these are the responses to things. He doesn't really have, again, the threats that that he can present to his opponent. Not to mention that Gorehowl is one of these things that really wins the control game for Warrior. It just gives them the ability to deal with threats without artificially inflating their deck with really powerful minions. You know, you have cards sometimes that are in and out of Warrior decks, like Ysera, even Alex Strauza to a certain extent. Some people are really experimenting with it. But with Gorehowl, you always can kind of stabilize because it's very rare that you're not able to pick up 2 or 3 big minions with it. And as a result, you know, thin your opponent's deck and be able to be extremely efficient with your removal once again.
How do you move forward here? Speaking of Ysera, by the way, Raynad's got Ysera and Deathwing in his deck.
Oh, that's right. He was the one who played Ysera, and he had Deathwing, and then he just lost.
Ysera and Deathwing. 19 mana with the finishers. Just in those 2 cards.
Ridiculous. I don't understand. It's a way to really kill druids too. I think you know Ysera gives druids such a hard time. I can't imagine it's something for any kind of miracle tech if you're going to be banning miracle anyways. So maybe you can get away with it. You know, people say, well, how can you justify playing Deathwing and Ysera in the current state of the metagame? And that's what these vetoes introduce. It's an ability for you to pick a pocket out of the metagame where you recognize it's weak against, or it's really strong against some of the other field that people have been a little bit neglecting, and maybe Deathwing and Ysera can shine.
Right. I like his play, honestly.
Oh man. Okay, so he hits the Acolyte. There it is.
That's pretty important, actually.
Certainly, I think getting
Right,
to this
this is
deck would
drawing
be really
unstable
important.
goal too. So it would have gotten 2 card draws at least off that Acolyte.
Well, yeah, he had the whirlwinds in combination. Okay, Reynad using a Gorehowl once again, taking out 3 premium minions. Back to back to back.
He's getting a lot of mileage from that Gorehowl.
And something that I haven't even noticed is how much life Amaz is at this point. He has Gromosh. He has a Gorehowl, so he's got 14. Unless if he picks up a second Cruel Taskmaster and his opponent doesn't heal, it doesn't matter what happens on the state of the board. He wins.
Yeah, this is actually getting really close. The Gorehowl's on 4 right now, right?
So Gorehowl's on 4.
10.
He has the 10 from the Gromosh. If he picks up any way to inflate that damage slightly, Amaz is dead no matter what happens on the board. But most likely, Amaz will deal with what's on the board. Hammer of Wrath is really clean for these 2-for-1s.
Yep. He's had almost no healing this game, too.
That is true. He has no way to heal out of that range.
Unless he draws Holy Light.
Holy Light, second true silver champion. Those are the opportunities. Holy Light it is.
Ooh. He's actually, this is a really good play here by Amaz, too. He's actually saved his Kodo a couple points of life. Because if he would have hammered the 1-3 instead, he would have lost his token. And then he would have had to use the Kodo to attack the 2-2.
Okay, Amaz senses it. He's going to use Holy Light. And that was a great play on his half. Now Reynad back to him. He's got opportunities to use removal, but he's still got that Gorehowl doing work. Second shield slam.
Yeah, I think you continue to pick apart minions here. You don't want to. I don't think you want to play Sylvanas either. I think you just continue to wait. Sylvanas in this spot is just almost a pure mind control. So you're just hoping your opponent plays the wrong minion, and then you can play Sylvanas Whirlwind and to clear out all the tokens, and then shield slam your own Sylvanas to take the big threat. Like, he actually wants to see Tyrion here, I think.
Ooh, he's hovering over the idea of maybe using Whirlwind.
That would be really strange.
I think so. There's just way too many ways for Paladin to deal with it. Humility, Kodo, not Kodo. Humility with equality, etc.
Yeah, we were talking about how dense his endgame is. There's no reason to use this here because he doesn't have a follow-up. He can afford to wait. He's at 30, 43, 42 HP. He has no reason to really rush the point here. He's totally fine waiting. Again, I kind of like the game plan of just being able to sit back, whirlwind the tokens out, and then shield slam your Sylvanas to take whatever big threat your opponent plays. I mean, you're quite literally wanting to play.
At the same time, ooh, Karen is a nice pickup as well. Definitely a great pickup.
Yep.
Do you use a whirlwind here so that equality is a lot worse?
I don't think so. I think you want your opponent to equality here.
Okay.
If for no other reason, you just want him to start using that stuff.
All right, Maz gets a Harvest Golem. Let's see.
I have no time for games.
He also is going to play as Sylvanas. Now, keep in mind that Death Rattle triggers are relevant. Karen will die before Sylvanas triggers, which means Sylvanas will be able to take Bane.
Oh, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
This may be an equality turn. Continue to make tokens, though.
Huh. Well, I think now if you use Whirlwind and Sylvanas and Shield Slam your own Sylvanas, now you can steal Amaz's Sylvanas. And now you have 2 Sylvanas.
Oh my gosh.
1 + 1 = 2, admirable.
So
Today
Whirlwind.
Today I learned.
I'm just making sure I have this right. Whirlwind, Sylvanas, Shield Slam your own Sylvanas, Profit.
And armor up with the Victory Cigar.
Yep.
Boom. And now he's taking another threat from Amaz, and Amaz will have to kind of be forced to use another kind of removal, maybe equality. And that will be activating for, that'll be the way, paving the road for something like Gromosh, because now he's still got, he's got 4 damage off that Gorehowl, or 3 damage, right? So that's enough, 17. If this Karen's able to survive with something like Bane.
Wow, when he draws Sunwalker, though.
Okay, well, the equality... Actually, he can double equality. I didn't even realize that he had the second Pyro and the second equality.
You can play the Sunwalker, too, which keeps him out of... I mean, the Sunwalker's difficult to deal with in this spot. It's like he's got to have more spells to deal with it.
Certainly.
Wait, that's actually no, that's game because he can.
Because he has the execute,
Grommash.
right?
No, he can't. He has Shield Slam, so he can Whirlwind to activate his Grommash, and then Shield Slam to clear.
Oh,
the 4/5
you're
after
right.
Shield
You're
Slam.
right. The second shield slam.
So
That
if he
is
sees
that
this,
10
this is lethal.
damage.
Oh my gosh. Now is
Reynad
not the
has
time to
the
miss
series
lethal.
now, so all he has to do is piece it together.
This is not the turn to miss it. Oh my gosh.
I think you just have to be very careful with how you calculate it. Reynad once again did end up bobbling game number 1 because he was overthinking it a little bit too much and just needed to act. Oh no! Oh no!
Oh no. That could be disastrous.
Well, Reynad didn't see it, and we're going to have to move on from this point on.
Oh,
But of course, with the luxury of being able to see it, we had the ability to kind of think while Reynad was thinking a lot of steps ahead. Now, keep in mind, there's by no means is Amaz out of the woods yet. This Miss Lethal could not even matter.
He's got to draw healing still.
And he draws it with lay on hands.
I don't know if it's enough. 21. He's going to be just out of range. He's going to be 1 damage off lethal.
No,
if he chooses to use this lay on hands. Because he'll go to 21, and then Reynad has 19
Oh,
damage.
you're right.
Or 20 damage.
Unless he picks up Cruel Taskmaster of some capacity to artificially inflate his damage.
Do you humility here? Because if you humility, Cruel Taskmaster's out of range too.
I think so. This is game 5. You have a lot of ways to kind of deal with other threats too. You still have a Peacekeeper. If Alex Straza comes out, though, you have that Peacekeeper. I feel like you have the quality in the second form of removal. So, in that respect, Amaz has to go for it.
Was Gorhel on 2, or did he attack with Gorhel last turn?
He did attack with Gorhel. He broke the Divine Shield that way.
Okay.
Well, Ysera has arrived, and that might give Reynad the Nightmare or Ysera Awakens that he needs to do that extra damage anyways. Let's see what he draws. Laughing Sister would probably be the worst one. Gets an Emerald Drake. That's still a legitimate threat.
More threats is always good at this point. Oh, Tyrion comes in the hand. This is actually going to get kind of scary now, because Amaz is going to start recovering with all these taunts.
Hold on. But the Faceless also still gives Reynad at the edge, I think, in the control. Because now he can kind of dictate using removal with the Faceless. He draws a second Execute.
I'm curious how much he values saving the Faceless for something like Tyrion, or if he's going to value being aggressive.
Amaz is running thinner on cards, though.
He's starting to run out of cards. That's the other thing that Reynad can consider, too, is now that he's gotten to this point, can he actually just grind his opponent completely out of cards?
I still can't believe Amaz is in this game.
I can't. Well, the game should have been over.
The series was over. Reynad is supposed to be playing his teammate at the moment, but he missed this opportunity to end that game.
And now this is tough moving forward. I think this Sludge Belcher is not a pretty sight right now, because you don't want to execute it.
Nope.
You don't really want to Faceless it.
So
is Faceless Emerald Drake his best play?
It seems like it.
You gotta want to do something else.
Oh wow. Grommash.
So here's something to consider, is that both equalities have been used now. Yep. So outside of something like Aldor Peacekeeper or Big Game Hunter, this Grommash is going to stick. So he's going for a Faceless on a Grommash here.
Okay, well we do know that Amaz has that Peacekeeper. He also drove Guardian of Kings.
Oh my gosh. Amaz, I think, is going to climb back into this game.
How many? Wait, no. Reynad still has Deathwing.
I forgot about Deathwing.
Don't forget about the Deathwing. If that is the last card, and Reynad's pacing himself pretty well relative to his opponent, is 5 to 7 cards, so Fatigue will be hitting Amaz a little bit quicker. If you can pace yourself, Reynad still can just end this game by checkmate rather than being able to just lethal his opponent.
Wow. I mean, you got to Eldor here. It's a matter of how you follow up. You know, he is considering using Tyrion, though. That's the only other play I think he could be legitimately considering. I think he just got to Eldor, though.
Is Aldor his last ability to deal with a high attack minion?
Let me think.
Other than straight up
That's
minion
a good
trading?
question. That's a
and
good
removal?
question.
Oh,
Oh my
wow, he's
gosh.
going for it. Oh,
Oh.
no, and that's a disaster because of Whirlwind
Yikes.
Execute.
Yep.
He has to go for this Aldor.
You got it. I think you have to Eldor here.
We know,
Yeah.
yes, we know, but it's not as easy as a call to make sometimes.
Yep. So Gromosh, something interesting to note is that Gromosh here, it's enraged already and its power's at 1. So if it takes damage again, it's not going to re-enrage. It's at 1 power now until something on the in its state changes. So if it gets returned to the hand or something, that's the only way this is going to change. If it deals damage, if it takes damage again, it's not going to re-enrage. I have learned this, and it's a painful process.
Sure, it does make it a little bit painful. I think Reynad still wants to save that Faceless for the Tyrion. He does still have Emerald Drake, which can put out a legitimate threat to whatever get posed by Amaz. He also can activate one of these executes. He does have 2 of them. And he has to kind of sense that Amaz is running out of threats, legitimate threats. He's gone through 2 Sludge Belchers, a couple of Sunwalkers.
God, this is another tough turn. It's like, how long do you save these executes?
I think you save 1 for Tyrion no matter what. But I think the second one here, it looks like he's thinking about using it.
Yep. So one of these executes is going to bite the dust. The other thing, too, is you want to have a way to activate your execute.
Well, you have a cool Taskmaster for that reason,
Right.
I suppose. You can use your last
So you
charge
need
to
to-
Gorehowl.
I think he wants to save his. I think he's supposed to save his Gorehowl. I think he's supposed to Cruel Taskmaster his Gromish.
Well, he's going to use that one last
Save the
ability
Cool
to proc
Taskmaster.
your cool Taskmaster.
Okay.
All right,
So
well,
0-1
0-1 Gorehowl, your job's
the second
done.
one. It's the second one we've seen this tournament.
It's rare. Top deck Azure Drake.
Don't know if that's what he wants to do.
Hmm.
Tyrion's looking mighty tempting here. This might be the only turn you have left to be able to get Tyrion down. This is... Oh, gosh. This is painful.
Well, Reynad sees that his opponent's playing mid-range creatures that are kind of weak.
Yep. This challenges the 7/6 Drake, too. Ooh, Fiery War Axe.
Oh, Fiery War Axe. Man, how tempting is it to be able to use your Cruel Taskmaster to go for something like a board clear?
How tempting is it to Faceless Manipulator your 7/6 right now?
That is also a legitimate question. It's a game of patience as well as attrition. How much information is going through these guys' head? They played a long 5-game series. One of potentially 3 for these guys. And they have to kind of recount, like, what has their opponent been playing? What cards do they have?
It's going to continue to save the Faceless. I like it. Faceless Manipulator is so important in this matchup, especially when you got to this point. Tyrion, every single turn, you're just 1 turn closer to Tyrion. You don't want to play Faceless and then see Tyrion. That's the nightmare scenario right now, I think. He's actually... I wonder if he's going to play this Cruel Taskmaster or not. I think he should,
you
because
got it. Oh,
it protects your... It's tough because you still want an activator for Execute, but you want to protect your Drake from something like Consecration as well.
You have a weapon to activate the execute, though. You still have a weapon. Oh, man, Amaz picks up 2 draw mechanics, and that gets him so close to fatigue.
Yeah. I don't think that Acolyte of Pain is going to get played this game.
Don't think so. Amaz can go for the Consecration clear. And he does pick up a Kodo, so he still has some creatures left here.
You got to Consecrate here. This is just too good. And Amaz has now taken the board, by the way, and he's going to start chipping away at this life total. Reynad needs a good draw here. That's
He gets a Ghoul.
not a terrible one, but not what he's looking for. He's looking for a second Ysera is what he's looking for, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, drawing from cards that are not in your deck is just beyond godly.
Yep. This is the right play too. This makes sure that this unstable goal will take out this Azure Drake, and that's really important right now, again, because he's just trying to grind his opponent out of cards.
What about second Holy Light? What if he has a second Holy Light there?
And that was just about to mention that. If Amaz draws Holy Light here, do you Holy Light the Azure Drake?
Oh, he's not going to even let him.
That's what Raynad's thinking about, too. He's like, you know what? I want him to Holy Light this Azure Drake.
And the best part is, he even has the Ungul, so he still has a way to kind of proc the execute if he needs to use it. Assuming his opponent plays out of turn. Sludge Belcher off the top for Amaz. Good quality draws here. As we get closer to the end. Reynad is almost out of cards. Just
I have to mention
what he can do.
Also, is that Amaz's instincts have been spot on this game. He's been holding this Tyrion for so long, trying to force his opponent to use removal spells. And look at him now. He still has Tyrion, and he's still even thinking about why he should or shouldn't play it.
You know, it could be the Faceless, it could be Black Knight, but for whatever reason, you're absolutely correct. Amaz's instinct has been spot on, at least with some of his power cards. So his macro decisions have been on point. This Kodo, what's it going to land on? It hits the Ghoul, and I think Reynad's happier about that than anything else. Amaz is going to use his opportunity to build up his board as much as he can. Hero power as often.
Oh, jeez.
Deathwing has arrived.
This can't be a Deathwing turn, can it?
Huh?
Oh my gosh, he's setting up the Deathwing now.
What you can do is this. You can Faceless and your Tyrion, and then Deathwing so you get the Ashbringer. Amaz is on fatigue. He's out of cards. The countdown has begun, and he has a very finite amount of damage. In fact, Tyrion kind of clogs with the True Silver Champion. How is Amaz going to plan to play this?
He's going to... I imagine he's got to just like play True Silver. And he's got to get the 2 attacks from True Silver, right? He needs all the damage he can get right now. I don't think Amaz can win this one. I think he's just, at this point, he's out of cards, and that's going to do it.
Hold on. I mean, Reynad could get impatient, but at the same time, he still has no rush. No rush. The True Silver will be doing 4 damage. He will be losing to some of these hero powers, but he also has the Deathwing as his trump card.
I think Reynad's just got too much life. I mean, just look at... Let's just count how much damage that Amaz can deal. So say that True Silver comes out. That's 8 points of damage. Let's say... I mean, Tyrion is almost certainly going to get Deathwinged. So it's 15 more from Tyrion. So now you're looking at 23 points of damage. You haven't even carved barely into his life total. You've just gotten through the armor and you put your opponent down to about 15. So Sludge Belcher is going to have to get a lot of work done if you want to end up winning this game. And then you have to... You also are having to work against the fatigue clock.
Well, you know, interestingly enough, BGH is still something for Reynad.
I think you just Faceless the Belcher, yeah.
Sure. I mean, you can't... BGH is just going to be sitting dead unless you're really expecting one last big minion from your opponent.
I don't think you suspect Ragnaros at this point. I think it just would have been played already. There's just no reason for your opponent to have Ragnaros in their hand. Like, that would have been the perfect turn to play it, is to... Your opponent's just played both executes. You have to play it and hope it wins through. He's counting the fatigue damage through. Because he knows his opponent's got Tyrion. And if he's been keeping perfect track, he knows his opponent's got a True Silver Champion as well. So he's just working through how much damage Amaz can actually deal right now, and then making his decision moving forward.
Amaz will die to fatigue in 7 turns guaranteed. Because if he heals with True Silver, it would be 6, but he will be able to heal for 4 more. So over the course of 7 turns, he will die no matter what. Can Reynad stall that long? Armor up as much as you can. Fatigue damage number 1 coming down. Amaz has to kind of continue to do what he can. Acolyte's still a dead draw, but how long is he going to wait for Tyrion?
He's got to wait. I mean, like I said, he's got to get these attacks from the True Silver Champion. He doesn't have an option. And now he's taking 3 more damage from Sludge Belcher.
Oh, we forgot about that.
Do you just play the Acolyte here? Do you just need the threat that bad?
No, I think you can't give any opportunity for your opponent to make you draw closer to fatigue. Amaz knows that as pretty much as well as anyone else. Slam. How much do you want to even draw?
Oh my gosh.
This series is too intense, Admiral. My doctor told me I should not be watching this at the moment.
This is Paladin versus Warrior games. 2 points of fatigue now.
Holy snap. It's now 2 damage for fatigue per turn, and he's going to be going up to 3 next turn. Maz is still playing the long game. Going to try to outlast his opponent.
Oh my gosh. Reynad's out of cards now.
What's his last card? I don't even know. Oh, it's an Acolyte of Pain.
Oh my gosh.
Both of these guys have cards that they're willing to dump.
Maz is
slam
counting
on
right
the
now.
1/1 token. And Reynad's going to try to just play this as long as he can. 3 damage. Amaz realizes that this is the push he has to make. Tyrion is almost bound to come out inevitably, which means that Reynad will have the Deathwing. And I think you're right, Honorable. I mean, obviously, I'm inclined to agree with you most of the time, but man, I wasn't exactly sure how this would come down to the wire. Game number 5, Fatigue versus Fatigue. And I think Reynad has Amaz in the corner.
Oh my gosh. I don't know how this race is working out right now.
Well,
That was a
Amaz
third
gonna be
point.
taking
That was a
4.
third point of fatigue damage, right?
That was the 3rd point, so he's going to be taking
4, 5, and 6. So that's 15 points of damage. So he's
for the
actually
next
got to
3
end this
turns.
game in 4 turns.
Can he do that? Can he even do that?
I don't
With
know.
the BGH even out right here.
He's got to play Acolyte. He just needs an extra threat on
Yeah.
the board. If it's kept count, his opponent has used both Whirlwinds and they've used both Cruel Taskmasters. They don't really have a way to deal more damage at this point.
That's right, because
Now
Reynad
Reynad-
is taking fatigue damage.
Tipping into fatigue.
He's completely fine playing the slow game because he's got more
Oh my
health.
gosh.
He even took down 2 damage off the board. Amaz is almost out of time. And also to the point where he won't be able to play Acolyte and his Tyrion simultaneously.
And Reynad could just reset the board anytime he wants to because he's got Deathwing in his hand. So he'll be
Sure.
facing down 30 afterwards, but all he has to do is reset it at a point where his opponent can't deal him enough damage, and he's got it sealed.
All right, well, he's just gonna armor up. Please do not do this to me where the game is over before Deathwing
gosh.
comes out. I would be so devastated.
Well, Amaz has got to end the game in the next 2 turns, so
There it is.
And this isn't going to do it, and that's going to be
his
game
name?
over. Deathwing is going to
And
be...
checkmate. Amaz is out of the WEC North American qualifiers with this Deathwing place. He has arrived. And what a way to end this series. Despite Amaz being able to try to put out as much damage as possible, it just came down to the final wire as Reynad will advance to play his teammate. And he goes down the only way honorable by using his Ash Finger on the
Wow.
Deathwing. What a hell of a series.
What a crazy... I don't think I've ever seen a game that crazy of Paladin versus Warrior. I've seen some crazy Warrior versus Warrior games, but my goodness. To end with a Deathwing at the end, where Tyrion falls short, and Amaz... that was something we talked about throughout the early stages of this game, is how important Armorsmith was in contributing to the point where Amaz literally couldn't deal enough damage to finish off Reynad, and it came into play in that game, and it ended up being a big factor.
Oh my
I'm
god.
just-
I'm trying
I'm-
to still recover from what we just
I ain't
witnessed.
got the words, Frodan.
That was bananas. The first series took 2 hours. I can't even believe it. Guys, this is just the first of 5 matches we have planned for you today. Reynad has stayed alive for now. He will be playing his teammate Tides of Time for a spot in the top 4. But Amaz has stopped his run right here in the round of 8. And Brad versus Reels, it'll just be a second one out. But for now, a lot of Amaz fans are going home quite disappointed because he was ranked #1 in GoSu Gamers. And by all means, for good reason. He's been performing out of his mind, but has run out of luck here in his last tournament here. So now with this is all said and done, I'm just trying to reset my brain, man. I didn't even know where to go from here. Are we supposed to take a break? I don't even know. Honorable, help me out here. What's going to happen?
We're going to be going to a break, guys, but don't go anywhere. That was our first match of the day, and it's crazy. And everyone playing today is
Absolutely.
fighting for their life. We've got Brad versus Reels up next. We're going to go to a quick break. Stay right in your seats. More Hearthstone to come.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the World Esports Championship for Hearthstone and North American Qualifier. What we just saw was an insane best of 5 between Reynad and Amaz. And normally, casters kind of embellish with adjectives like insane, crazy, like madness. But that was the total embodiment of those words. If you missed that, absolutely go back to the VODs and watch. If you're just joining us, you came a little bit too late to the party, but welcome. We're getting ready for our second series between Brad versus Reels. And don't worry, Reynad will be back later today to play against his teammate Tides, and the winner will that will advance to the top 4. Taking a look at who's been eliminated so far, Amaz is the first to drop, unfortunately. Team Liquid, the only representative, has dropped out for now. Meanwhile, Brad will be representing Team Don't Kick My Robot. Reels from Team Mana Grind, 2 of the lesser-known teams in the North American scene, but still with plenty of talented players. Reels and Brad definitely at the helm of that. Admirable, real quick, if we can kind of just look at the brackets, what have you been thinking so far of the quality of play that we've been seeing? I mean, Reynad did miss one of the lethals that we caught. Apparently, there was a second lethal that he also missed. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that's a good summary of how much nerves and tension is on the line here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pressure coming into a tournament like this. This is an 8-person tournament where 2 people are guaranteed a seat into the NA. I'm sorry, into the bigger WEC tournament that pays out $62,000. So this tournament alone, getting top 2 is worth $2,000. And then with thousands of people watching, and with also something personal to prove, nerves come into effect. It does help. It does affect the way you think and the way you're going to play the game, because it has to weigh on your mind. That pressure adds up. To be able to play in the spotlight while having to play against some of the most talented players in the world, while still having to win and it be important and worth something. I mean, it's tough to really understand what these players are going through unless you've been in that sort of situation yourself. And having been in that sort of situation, I understand what it's like. Like, I've miscounted before on camera. I'm pretty sure that I don't think that there's a single player in the history of any competitive game who doesn't have mistakes due to the amount of pressure that they're under. So those factors add up, and fortunately for Reynad, it didn't come into effect in the last game. He was still able to control it all the way through the end. But those are the kinds of mistakes that you have to avoid, because if that's something that you do every now and again, sometimes it will come back to cost you.
Certainly so. Now let's talk a little bit and shift our gears towards Reels and Brad. It's very easy to get caught in the wind of hype, what we just watched. But Reels and Brad, let's take a look at their vetoes. Brad has vetoed the Miracle Rogue, and rightfully so. Reels has taken away the Warlock from Brad, which Reels did probably get to see yesterday, because these players, they are trying to watch some of the other opponents' games and get intel on them when they're not playing. And Reels did see that Zoo deck from Brad, so perhaps he feels like Zoo would be one of the worst decks for his lineup, and he has opted to allow his opponent to have that Miracle Rogue.
Yeah, which is really curious to me. I still don't understand the decision. It's like almost every single game I lose to Miracle Rogue, I feel like there's not really much I could have done about it, and I lose to it what feels like at least 50% of the time. And there's just no way to get around it. So I still prefer the vetoes on Miracle Rogue. I think there's a reason it's the best deck, and there's a reason that so much deck building has been warped around it. But this is a testament to how comfortable Reels feels playing against a Miracle Rogue. He's tuned his lineup for it, and this match is going to be a matter of whether or not that can come into effect. So I see there's merit to taking out Zoo. You know your opponent's going to take out your own Rogue deck, and your Druid deck's kind of weak to Zoo. So there is something to be said for that. But I still think that it's better to it's better to veto Miracle Rogue instead. But we'll have to see.
I think so. I think game number 1 is almost ready between our Reels and Brad. So let's jump into the mulligans and get ready for our second series of the day. Who will be the second player eliminated, and who will continue the tournament hopes up? Seems like Reels, he's going to be picking up the Warlock, I believe. Is that what it was? And then I see that Hunter is the first choice for Brad.
I think it's a really strong lead for Brad here. He knows that his opponent is very likely to lead with Handlock once they've left up Miracle Rogue. So he just counterpicks it with Hunter here. I am very surprised. Oh, does he not know it's Handlock? Because that would explain
that
these
could be
mulligans a lot.
explanation.
Yep, because Savannah Highmaid's a card you really want to keep if it's Handlock, and Unleash the Hounds is kind of a card you don't want to keep if it's Handlock.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Reels did end up showing his Handlock as well. This could be a little bit of a poor scouting from Brad, not doing research on his opponent, or maybe he has a game plan that we don't know about. Either way, the outcome of this game could be decided based on those mulligans. He does have that Buzzard Unleash combo, though, so maybe he just values that so much that he's going to be able to draw into this high main later. Who knows?
It's definitely something that makes a lot of sense to keep. Reels also, by the way, I have to say he's very good at handlock. He really knows the matchups and understands what he has to do. So this turn 1 Sun Fury Protector is literally meant to just disrupt his opponent's board and then move forward from there. And I think that's his best game plan. Life tapping is sort of working against what you're trying to do because you want to life tap afterwards to continue to stay in the game, or at points when you just have nothing else to do. But in the meantime, you need to apply pressure. Hunter is applying plenty of pressure just with its hero power, so you have to find a way to fight back against that.
All right, what's he going to draw? Emperor Cobra. Okay.
That's actually not that bad right now.
My ex and his little brother.
That's a pretty good card in this handlock matchup.
Yeah. Interesting. Especially if you put something like the Houndmaster on it, right?
Right.
And then it's just able to kind of absorb a lot of the damage. Interesting stuff. Okay, so Brad does play this Emperor Cobra, and I think Reels would realize, well, you know, that's not a card I normally see, so a little bit of a lighthearted moment for both these players.
This is going to be... Reels is actually applying a pretty good amount of pressure here, too. He's going to have 5 points of damage on the board, and Soulfire is going to be taking out this Emperor Cobra. So a pretty good draw on the Soulfire. And he's going to have Sludge Belcher in a couple turns as well.
All right, he dumps the Ironbeak Owl.
I think that's his best discard.
You don't think
Alex
Hellfire?
Better. Well, Hellfire
you
can
like
still recover
Alex
the card. I don't know. It's like you don't want to discard it because then you don't have access to it, but it's like the Owl can be important to silence things like Savannah Highmane.
Sure.
I think Brad's got to take Savannah Highmane here, by the way. I don't think there's really any other option.
Yeah, when you see an Owl being discarded, you're feeling a lot more confident about it, too.
And not only that, but it's just this is the key card in the matchup. This is the one you want to stick on turn 6 and let it do work.
You like Savannah Highmane as a key card? I personally like things like double kill command.
Kill command's really important in this match. There's no doubt, but Savannah Highmane is... I mean, this is where your repetitive damage comes from. This is something that you kind of rely on for this deck. If this card gets rolling, it ends up spelling the end of the game. And something else that's I think he could justify is I don't mind using Kill Command on just the Earthring Farseer here. You don't want the board to get out of control either. When you have a second one, your hand is strong enough, I think, to fight through enough pressure. This is a tough choice from Reels now. Does he play the Sun Fury Protector? I don't think he does. I think 2 minions is just more than enough.
I think so. You don't want to give your opponent extra cards to get it back on the board and whatsoever. You know, the Hunter really excels when they're able to pick apart with their opponent with optimal removal, just like a lot of other classes. And that's why this Hunter deck does play more of a controlling style.
Yep. Sludge Belcher's also coming down next turn, so a 4th minion on the board's probably not what you need. He can just count his damage too, like scaling through the game. Like say he doesn't play this Sun Fury Protector, he's got 5 more damage next turn and take his opponent to 16, and then he's got 8 more damage, take him down to 8. Oh, so that's something he could count. If he plays this Sun Fury Protector, it would get in 4 more points of damage, but he also has Power Overwhelming and Hellfire to deal the extra damage at the end too.
Mm-hmm. Well, all those things to consider. As right now, we do see that Reels is going straight once again for the face and just plays his Belcher. Why not? He even has an answer to a big minion with Siphon Soul and regain some of that life. So the Handlock's taking the initiative against the Hunter, which again, we've been seeing this from a couple of players. Guys like Kalento like doing this. And now we see Reels also employing it. And both of these guys, excellent at Handlock.
Yeah, this is really important too, by the way. If he picks up a Timberwolf here.
A web spinner.
Very close. That may have been... That's sort of interesting. I wonder why he would do it that way.
Maybe he wants to save the Hunter's Mark for some really big minions like the Giants.
I think it's possible. You're certainly facing... Because it's like now is... Aren't you just vulnerable to... I mean, I guess you're vulnerable to Shadow Flame right now? And Hellfire? You're taking a lot of damage, and this isn't the position you want to be in. Like, now if your opponent just has Leroy and Power Overwhelming plus the damage, you're just dead. That's a scary position to be in.
Mountain Giant off the top. He's counting at the moment. He's got 8, 13, plus Hellfire. I think that's lethal.
Yeah, it looks to me like he's got 17 points damage. Yeah. So 2 plus 3, that's 5. Then he's got 4 from Power Overwhelming, that's 9. And then he's got 3 from Hellfire, that's 12. And then Soulfire, yeah, he just got the game.
So Reels has the game right here.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. Now it's all about whether or not he sees this.
Yep. Reels is going to take his time, too. He's going to make sure he counts through it over and over again. This is something he does in stream, too. When he has lethal, he'll say, I think this is lethal, and he'll count through it multiple times to make sure that he's not miscounting. Because, again, this is the spot where you can't afford to make a counting error.
Yeah, I mean, he's hovering over those cards and counting, so he knows as well. Just wants to double, triple check. You can't be too sure. There's something you learn from math class is to definitely check your work. Reels is going to take this first game, and Brad dies with almost a full hand, which is quite the shame as a Hunter player. You just feel like you want to be able to put out all these threats against Handlock, and this is a matchup where you're favored, in my opinion.
I think you're very favored, and I think the fact that he didn't use Kill Command early on to take out the 3/3, I mean, that just shows how much it added up. I mean, that Earthring Farseer dealt 9 points of damage.
It's kind of a Pyroblast.
Yeah, I don't see Justify holding it. It's just the only way you're going to lose is if your opponent actually puts together a mid-range push for lethal, because you have all the damage in the world and all the threats in the world to keep his turns occupied. So between Buzzard and Unleash, because you can even use your cards inefficiently and make up the damage later with Buzzard and Unleash, and that's sort of like the point. Like, that's why you keep Unleash, right? Is so you can refill your hand after you have to make some trades that you're not exactly happy with. I think it's just that it could be a little bit of inexperience in the matchup, but I think more of it's just oversight. He just felt fine. It's just a 3/3, and his hand is stacked to the brim, so he's not thinking about how much burst that Handlock can put together going into like turn 6 or 7.
Sure, it's a wrong perspective to take on the matchup, and it's costed him his first game. Brad now has to go to a Druid and Rogue, which could struggle against the Handlock. Depends on how Reels start. Reels didn't exactly have the greatest of starts either. What did he have? Sudden Fury Protector and Earthen Ring Farseer. Other than that, he had cards that was just situational, but was able to kind of get into that situation where he's able to press for damage. And a lot of Handlock players would play that so passive. They try to use these removals as options to address the Hunter and let them build the board. And I think it just shows the flexibility of Handlock, but more importantly, it shows how people understand how to play this deck beyond just the traditional archetypes of, I mean, the Handlock was just a control Handlock. That's what they like to do. Play these big, giant minions, try to intimidate your opponent, and do big burst after you load the board up. Very good job by Reels. And Brad is going to have to go back to the drawing board here.
Yeah, I don't think you want to queue Rogue into this. I think you want to wait for it. So I think this is a very natural Druid spot, and kind of hope that the cards fall your way. Because game 1, Reels did everything he needed to do, and Brad falling a little bit short, kind of using his mana inefficiently, overvaluing the hero power, I'd say.
Sure.
So put it behind you, go with Druid, try to well innervate your opponent, and hope that Miracle Rogue is able to pick up the slack that you might be missing, because you don't want to run it in the Handlock.
Fair enough. All right, so game number 2 is ready, and let's take a break. Oh, just kidding. I'm hearing multiple messages, and I'm kind of bobbling in here. Regardless, I kind of want to make one last touch, is that Brad is playing a kind of a unique style of Druid. It's not necessarily the one that we've come to expect. It's a little bit of that mid-range, a little bit of that rampy style, with things like Argent Commander, but something like an Ancient of War. Right?
Oh, that's right.
Those things are kind of like polar opposites in kind of direction you want to take. So maybe that throws a big change up, and that can put Reels off his game depending on how much aggression or defensiveness he wants to put on with his Druid deck.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about how rather ingenious I thought that deck build was, because you have Argent Commanders in there that are going to force your opponents to use Keeper of the Groves in spots where it's really easy to use Keeper of the Grove to kill a 4/2. And once you've baited out those Keepers of the Grove, then you have Ancient of War, and the only thing that threatens it is Black Knight. Because one of the other bad things about Ancient of War in the Druid Mirror is that when your opponent silences it, it's effectively 5 damage from a Keeper of the Grove, and they take away the taunt. So it's just like a miserable board swing in favor of the person who's able to use Keeper. So that having both of those in the deck was actually really interesting to me, and I actually forgot about that until you reminded me.
That's what I'm here for, at least that and being able to talk out of my butt. Brad is going to go with, it looks like his Druid deck, and I think for good reason. That's definitely has the better matchup against Handlock, I think. In terms of the percentages, if you can get a good start, if you can have the cards that really tilt the percentages in your favor, things like the BGH, things like the Keeper to kind of start things off, almost feels like Handlock can't do anything. They're just at the mercy of whatever Druids be able to do and build the board, even end the game early if they have something like Savage Roar.
Yeah, I actually would like to see a mulligan this Harvest Golem here as well. Keeper of the Grove is so good in this matchup, and Harvest Golem's rather mediocre. It's kind of just like a 2/3, and it puts pressure on your opponent, but the Druid, oftentimes, especially when they have Argent Commander, is at the liberty of being in the position of the control player. So I think when he keeps Harvest Golem here, it may be... I think he's undervaluing how much the extra shot at Keeper of the Grove is worth. Or even Big Game Hunter, if that's something that's in his deck.
Man, Reels is going like he's just in the zone at the moment. I think he feels nice. He's just examining his cards, make his opponent second guess maybe what he has. Again, just take the time. You don't need to like immediately rush, even though he knows that these are pretty much passes and with life taps coming up for him. When you go first, you're most likely life tapping the first 2 times against Druid.
Yep. No reason to coin the Harvest Golem here. It's just going to throw his curve off. He wants to have a turn 6 and turn 7 play, so that coin's likely going to be in his hand for a great deal of this game.
As a result, that might be the slow start that gives the Handlock once again the control of the matchup, because he will be playing that Mountain Giant. If they can't deal with it, this is where Lotheb becomes really strong and powerful, because then there are options to deal with it in response. Say they only have this Harvest Golem, the only way they can respond is like a swipe and like a Wrath or something. Dropping the Lotheb allows him to shut down that option.
Yep. Oh, Reel's crossing his fingers.
No BGH. Oh, it's the Keeper. The wrong answer.
Reels is about to get the good news.
How about this?
Thumbs up.
We're all good to go,
Reels.
Captain. Do you like dropping a Faceless here?
now.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, you have to drop Faceless here, I think. You can just outpressure your opponent. Oh, wow. That would be really weird. No, I don't think Lotheb's right at all. And there's a lot of reasons why I don't think it's right, but the main one is because Faceless is so powerful in this spot. Like, your opponent isn't going to combo you out of the game next turn. It's just like, what's the point of dropping this Lotheb?
Well, I mean, not only is Lotheb a big threat, but it disrupts your opponent's ability to respond. Say he only had Yeti and Swipe. That was like his primary way to deal with it. Now the only way he can is Keeper of the Grove or charge a Druid of the Claw.
That makes a lot of sense, but like, say you just drop a second Mountain Giant, your opponent's still sort of in the same position, right? Like, if they have attack with Yeti and Swipe, you just have an 8/7 on the board, and you continue to pressure your opponent. You can just drop Lotheb when your opponent would be going into a Force of Nature range, and either to end the game or to clean up your board.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think Lotheb on a board with 2 Giants, like, triples the power. Not even because then you threaten the lethal. Assuming he can't deal with the first Giant as well.
Like what? So yeah, your opponent
Lotheb's deal with the first seal giant. For the win condition.
Yeah. It's like Lotheb. He couldn't deal with the first Giant, so how does he deal with the second Giant? Like, I just don't. I don't understand. I don't understand favoring Lotheb over Mountain Giant, because now this Faceless is actually going to get stuck in his hand for a bit.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how it's able to kind of pan out. Maybe he drops his combo eventually. Like, the quality of hand for Reels' hand quality is still pretty good.
Yeah. A Sledge Belcher. Yeah, well, Brad's going to be able to... Yeah, he may be able to slowly start climbing back into this game. It was a really rocky start, but I think a bit of a misstep from Reels is going to allow Brad some breathing room.
So, well, still is like the best turn out.
Yeah. Not the best turn, but certainly a turn that you needed if you're Brad. You preferably would like Black Knight to be a big swing, but it's just, frankly, it's just not going to happen here.
Hang on.
Ooh, how much does he have?
Hang on.
9. Oh my gosh, he's got 17 damage.
He is 1 damage off lethal. Assuming he doesn't discard the second Soulfire.
I'm pretty sure you're just supposed to Faceless your own 5/5 here and start attacking. You're very vulnerable to swipe that way, but you've been vulnerable to swipe before, and it's like, I guess playing Faceless on your Lotheb is a little bit inconsistent with that game plan.
I don't like Faceless with Lotheb because I think it's too much of an aggressive stance when he doesn't need to be. Not to mention that there also is that fringe case where he might just die to an Innervate combo.
Yep.
So I like the idea of playing a little bit slower. He still has proven that he's not able to deal with his Lotheb yet. Yeah. And you sneak in the damage, and you might draw on the Leroy and win the game.
I just realized he also has Black Knight for when Ancient of War would come out. So he feels very comfortable using Siphon Soul here.
That's just gross.
I wonder how he fit the Black Knight. Did he take out a Siphon Soul for Black Knight?
Quite possibly. The second Siphon Soul is definitely the flex spot for Handlock, as well as maybe the Ironbeak Owl. Swipe top deck. Not that useful at the moment.
This is a tough spot if you're Brad now. How important do you value board development versus not putting yourself in a position to take lethal, and that's really tough. Oh, he's gonna
my
go for
God.
it. Oh my gosh, that's gonna
This
be
is
game.
disgusting. That's
Wait.
game right there because he does have the
Yeah,
power
that's
bombing and the
that's
soul
13
fire.
points of damage. Yep.
Oh my God, that's it. Game number
And
2
just
ends
like
just as
that.
quickly as game number 1.
Faceless still stuck in the hand, by the way.
Wait.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, Rios, you play a little too quick. I
Oh
didn't
my
realize.
god. He still has an option to go for it. He's not even gonna go for it.
Maximum EM.
What on earth is Reels doing?
What on earth is in the water today for some of these guys? They're playing a little too quickly and recognizing the opportunity, but they're not finishing and capitalizing on what they have. Now, I don't know if this will actually make a difference, because still, double Soulfire to the face, assuming these minions all die, is still good enough.
Huh. Well, he's gonna have to. The point was he was gonna have to risk it. He didn't have to risk it before. Now he actually has to risk it if he wants to go for the win this turn.
Well, maybe top tech's like Iron Beak Owl. Huh.
You just go for it here. Like you missed it last turn.
Yeah.
You can just let it rip. Life tap and let's go. I can't believe that that's happened. This is the second time today.
Well, I mean, do you
Now he realized it too. He realized it's.
And okay, well, you know what? No harm, no foul. But man, he made himself. It's a little embarrassing. I gotta admit that. You know, Rios had so much damage. He counted his burst the previous turns too, and how the hat goes over the face.
Brad has to be confused.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute. So you had power overwhelming and 2 soul fires, and you didn't kill me last turn? What on earth is going on?
I have no idea. You know, I think these guys, again, a little bit cracking under the pressure. Yeah. You know, Rios, he counted his damage the previous turn, didn't he? He was like hovering over soul fires and power overwhelmings, and he even did the previous game. And the one turn he doesn't, he forgets that. You know, I think you get too excited by the Black Knight opportunity. You get so much value, you do 10 damage. That's almost as good as it gets with Black Knight. And at that point, he's just like, okay, well, this game's a blowout. I'm not going to lose from this point on. I'm just going to drop Ancient Watcher. My hand's too good. And you just forget that you don't have the opportunity. You have the opportunity to end the game right there.
Yeah. It's something you can't do. You can't get overexcited. You can't get tunnel vision. You have to slow down and make sure that you're taking your time. Most of the mistakes that players make are made because they acted too quickly. You have time every turn, so you can do that. But I don't know. Maybe he's trying to impress Reynad so he can go after Team Tempo Storm.
Oh, pew, pew. On that note, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, more shots fired by That's Admiral at WEC North America Qualifiers.